Hey there and welcome. This is Jinny and I'm so glad you're here. Today I want to share with you how I use watercolor pencils to color my stamped images. Okay, let's get started with this one. I have my watercolor paper lying there ready for stamping. The ink I'm using here is a pigment ink, so I heat set it before coloring. I could have used StazOn ink, but after using StazOn ink, you always have to clean your stamp with a cleaner right away, and honestly, I was too lazy to do that. The colors of my choice are red, raspberry, and brown. The paintbrush I'm gonna use here has a really fine tip. As you can see, it's a number 3 paintbrush, and it's perfect for coloring small or detailed images. Now I'm applying the red shade. Pressing very lightly, I'm filling in the whole apple. Then I'm spreading out the color with a damp brush. At this point, I'm not caring much about the blending itself. I'm just spreading out the color. Then I'm grabbing the raspberry color, and I'm picking up that color directly from the pencil and kinda dabbing it onto my apple image. Now I'm coming in with the red. Again, I'm pulling the color directly from the tip of the pencil and add it to my image. Here I'm cleaning off my brush and then coming back with just water to kinda erase the color from some areas. To intensify the colors, I'm putting another layer of the red and then the raspberry shade. I keep adding the colors until the image is colored in how I want it. This time I'm coloring directly onto the paper, and then I'm using a damp paintbrush to spread out that brown shade. Now I'm gonna set it aside to dry and move on to my next image. Again, I'm using a black pigment ink for stamping, so I need to heat set it before coloring. For coloring the skin, I'm gonna use light and medium flesh tones. I'm starting out by coloring directly onto the watercolor paper, and then I'm gonna use a damp paintbrush to spread out that color. All the colors that I'm using in this video will be listed in the description box down below, so if you're interested, just go ahead and check it out. Now I'm coming in with a medium flesh tone. This time I'm picking up the color directly from the pencil again. I kinda keep alternating between the two shades and also keep adding the colors on top till I'm happy with the result. The stamps that I'm using here are some oldest from my stash, so they aren't available anymore, but the purpose of this video is showing the coloring process, so I hope you don't mind me using them. Coming in with a straight yellow, I started out by coloring directly onto the paper. I'm using a damp paintbrush to spread out that bright yellow. Then I'm picking up the color directly from the pencil and add it on top. This way I can increase the intensity of the color and also get the shading I want to have by only using just one color. I felt that a face looked a little bit pale, so I'm grabbing the light flesh tone again and keep adding the shade until I'm satisfied with the result. Then I'm taking a blue shade to paint the tiny wings. Using the black pencil, I'm starting out by coloring directly onto the paper. This time I kinda add the shading during the coloring process. Now I'm using a damp paintbrush to spread out that color. Starting out in the middle, I'm moving to the outside line where the color is more intense. After doing that, I'm grabbing the black pencil and picking up the color directly from the tip of it. And now it's time to add the shading. I keep applying the color on areas where I want to increase the color intensity. I keep repeating the coloring process until it turns out the way I want it to be. I like using watercolor pencils for coloring. For me, they are easier to control than the watercolors in pen form. I find it quite difficult to get the right amount of water or color whenever I use traditional watercolors. I pretty much have all the black areas colored in how I want them, so now I move on to the hair. I'm grabbing several shades of brown, and I'm starting out by coloring directly onto the paper using the lightest color. Here I decided to apply some color on her cheeks, so I'm adding a reddish flesh tone onto the paper. The harsh lines I'm blending in by adding the light flesh tone. Now we are coming back to her hair. Using a damp paintbrush, I'm spreading out the light brown color. Coloring the hair is by far my most favorite part of the whole coloring process. Now I'm coming in with a medium brown shade. This is more of a reddish brown color, and I'm pulling the color directly from the tip of the pencil and keep applying the shade. I kinda paint short strokes to imitate strands of hair. As I mentioned before, I love using watercolor pencils. The amount of water and color is really easy to control, especially when coloring hair, for example. When using traditional watercolors in pen form, I wasn't able to get those fine strokes as I'm doing here. I like to apply the color little by little and just keep adding the shade to build up the color intensity. This way, I can get quite a bit of definition and also more dimension to my image. Here you can see that by just controlling the amount of water, you can get a quite different shade from just one pencil. Now I'm moving on to my darker shade. Again, I'm picking up the color from the pencil and draw short strokes. Let's talk a little bit more about those pencils. Another benefit of having them in pencil instead of pen form is that you can actually use them like colored pencils. The colors are more subtle and not too bright or intense, but you can even use them on colored or dark cardstock. You just have to stamp your image using white pigment ink or kinda prep your paper by applying some white acrylic paint, for example, before coloring. I wanted her hair color to be more of a reddish brown shade, so I'm grabbing the second color and applying it onto the paper. My paintbrush is almost dry, but it still has enough moisture to apply a little bit of color. This adds a little bit of texture and dimension to my image, what I really like. Using the stamping tool, I'm stamping the image once more to define its outlines. I want to have her sitting on fresh grass, so I'm grabbing 3 shades of green. Starting with the lightest shade, I am picking up the color from the pencil and begin to draw strokes. To make the grass look more natural, I vary the heights and directions. Now I'm coming in with a medium green color. Again, my paintbrush has just enough moisture to pick up the color from the pencil and apply it onto the paper, but it's not damp enough to kinda dissolve the color underneath. Now I'm adding the darker shade and keep repeating the coloring process. I love drawing grass because I don't have to be too careful. The less careful, the better and more natural it looks. Grabbing the lighter shades again, I'm filling in the gaps here and there. You don't have to be too accurate when doing this. As I said before, it looks more natural if you're not too perfect. I'm gonna stamp this adorable sloth. This stamp set is still available in stores. As you can see, I'm not stamping the whole branch. I'm planning to extend it later. For coloring, I'm gonna use two warm gray shades. Off screen, I heat set it, and using the lighter pencil, I'm starting out by coloring directly onto the paper. I'm adding the darker shade onto the eyes and filling in the face with the lighter shade. Now I'm using a damp paintbrush to spread out that color. I'm applying the reddish-brown shade directly onto the paper and extend the branch. I'm spreading out that color with a damp paintbrush. I'm gonna put another layer of the lighter gray shade, so I'm picking up the color from the pencil and add some shading here and there. Again, my paintbrush has just enough moisture to add the color onto the paper, but it's dry enough to prevent the color underneath from dissolving. I really wanted to achieve a furry look, so using the darker shade, I started drawing short strokes. I also wanted his fur to look a little bit untidy and tousled, so I'm just carelessly adding some strokes here and there without caring much about the right shading. I'm grabbing the lighter shade again and keep repeating the coloring process. Now I'm coming in with a medium brown shade to paint the branch. I'm picking the color directly from the pencil and add it onto the paper. Then I'm adding the darkest brown shade onto the branch. Again, I'm drawing strokes and hope that they'll kinda look like wood grain. I couldn't help but coming in again with a darker gray color and keep adding strokes here and there to achieve the furry look that I wanted so much. Using a black gel liner, I'm extending the outer lines of the branch. I also wanted to create a blue sky for the background, so I'm drawing some clouds and filling in the empty areas with a pencil. This time, I'm spreading out the color with my damper brush. I'm using enough water to dissolve all the pencil marks. I'm not doing any shading, so it's really easy and fast to do. Now I'm creating the front panel for my first card. I'm stamping a border using pumice stone distress ink. I usually don't use distress ink for stamping, of course, but I'm gonna use a gray card base, and the color matches so well, that's why I'm using it here. There's a gap between the borders, but it's okay because I'm gonna hide it behind the apple image. There I have my gray card base, and I trimmed down a thin strip out of the same gray cardstock, and I also fussy cut the image, so everything is ready to be assembled. I'm gonna write down the sentiment myself, so I just put the strip in place and I'm holding it with my fingers while I'm writing down the greeting. Using a black pen, I'm tracing the pencil lines. The sentiment says, "You're the apple of my eye." I then erase the pencil lines and adhere the apple. After cutting it down, I adhered the sentiment to the front panel and then I glued it down onto the gray card base. The second image, I first matted on yellow cardstock. After stamping the sentiment, I adhered that to a white square card. I'm still doing a little bit of stamping here. After adhering the panel to the card, I'm also adding some stamping to the inside of it. Using a white gel pen, I'm adding 3 dots on each of her cheeks, and that finishes off the card. Here are the completed cards one by one. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you so much for spending your time with me. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I also hope you'd consider subscribing to my channel, because I'm gonna make videos all about handmade cards, and I would love to have you joining me for the next one. I also want to mention that my videos will be made in English and German, so the next one will be in German. So before you go, make sure you click the subscribe button. And that's it for now. Thank you for watching and hope to see you again next time. Bye!